Welcome to the Great Beer State podcast from the Michigan Brewers Guild. The Great Beer State is a weekly show sharing conversations and stories from the passionate people who contribute to our vibrant Michigan beer community. It is made up of a mix between full-length archived interviews from the Guild's first documentary book project, A Rising Tide, Stories from the Michigan Brewers Guild, and conversations recorded in the here and now. Each episode is kicked off with a conversational update from host Scott Graham, Executive Director of the Guild, and the beer-evangelist Fred Biltman, author of A Rising Tide. Here's Scott and Fred. Welcome to the Great Beer State, episode 15. My name's Fred, and I'm here with my good friend and Executive Director of the Michigan Brewers Guild, Scott Graham. Scott, how are you?
Doing great today, Fred. Thanks. Happy to be introducing episode 15. It feels like we're getting some traction, and I've been enjoying the project a lot. So great to be here again for another week.
Yeah, excellent. Me too. And we are going to be jumping back into the here and now. We had a couple of interviews from the archives the last couple of weeks. And this week we're talking to Edward Stencel of River Rouge Brewery. And that's a conversation that's happening now. So you'll get updates from him and a little bit of perspective of what's going on, especially related to being a small brewery in the days of COVID-19. But before we jump into that, as per usual, we like to kind of talk about updates that are relevant for brewery members, allied members, enthusiast members, and our Michigan beer-loving public. So what's new? What's going on?
Well, to me, it feels like another week in the era of COVID-19. That seems to, while it might not dominate every conversation, it's a part of every conversation that I have, whether if it's somebody from a brewery, somebody from the media that wants to talk about a particular aspect of the industry, other related businesses. There's always a part of the conversation that has to do with what's different, what are the challenges, what do we imagine in the future, what's it like to try and run a place where people from the public are coming in, and that's a real recurring theme, and we've talked about it many times so far on this podcast, but it continues to be a real challenge to interface with people who are weary or tired or frustrated with masks and procedures and protocol, and there continue to be flare-ups. It's a genuinely aggravating and frustrating, and I think stressful situation for many.
Yeah, and hopefully we can continue to smooth those edges out and find ways to be understanding and appreciative. And I was just thinking logistically too, it's such a interesting time and challenge to try and forecast your business, to try to understand how things are going to move and what to make, and I don't know, just anything, whether you're going to be busy or not, and having all of your revenue move around to different categories from what your old to-go numbers is not going to make any sense to what that looks like now, all depending on how that business revised for the current situation in their space. So it's a lot to juggle, and a lot of reason to be understanding and supportive and appreciative. I thought about that recently too. Like, boy, we went a couple months without anything. It's just sort of a difficult realization that I would hope that we would have a bigger appreciation for what we have. Like, wow, we just weathered a storm where that whole segment was shut down, and now they're open but with conditions, and hopefully we can just make it through and be appreciative of that.
Yeah, I guess it does make me think about other states. I listen to my counterparts talk from around the country, and there are definitely a handful of states where the challenge is to try and associate the breweries more with restaurants and less with bars. There are a lot of places where the breweries can't even be open, or
Mm.
trying to figure out how to become a restaurant so that they can be open. And it's a part of our community, I guess, and what we've developed here in Michigan, that I think that the legislature and the administration and the governor's office recognizes the value of our industry and knows it well enough to have a feel for what it is and where we fit in. And I'm pretty appreciative that we have been um, treated as what we are, family gathering places, and have not been subject to, well, we've been recognized as more of a restaurant and less of a bar. I feel bad for the bars. They're certainly big customers of ours, and they've had to be shut down based on at least their indoor operations, based on how much alcohol they sell as a percentage. And I'm appreciative that the breweries haven't been lumped in with that. And I feel for our friends in the bar community that had to go back to outdoor and takeout only.
Yeah, it's a heck of a thing to navigate, and I guess with your perspective, talking to guild directors around the country, reality is it could be worse, um, and it could all be better too. But the main thing that makes it better is when this virus gets eradicated, and that's going to be a ways down the road. So hopefully we can all work together and keep drinking fresh Michigan beer along the way.
Yeah,
So
that's the rallying cry, and fortunately, it's still happening.
yeah, yeah. Here's to that. Um, what else is happening? Any other call to members or the public?
Yeah, I think like we were just mentioning a few moments ago, I'm proud of the podcast project. I really hope that people find it fun and engaging and of some value. And now with episode 15, we're starting to have, there's enough there that it's, I think, more interesting than just when we were getting going. You can discover it and listen to some episodes you might be interested in, listen to those that can wet your whistle for, or tempt your appetite for more. So we certainly want to promote the industry through what we're doing. I guess promote the podcast to promote the industry. And we're also would really love to hear feedback from anybody that listens and has something to share. If there's a creative idea of something that you like, if there's something that you find annoying, we'd be happy to hear that too. But uh, really hope to see feedback that will help guide us to how to make the podcast better and better.
Yeah, and you know what I always love hearing too is share something you found enjoyable in the conversations, whether it's a story, a quote, whether it's funny or meaningful or inspiring. Like we'd love to hear what made you think, or smile or laugh. So we'd encourage you to share that with us on social media. Do what you can to share the episode, maybe even post a review. But I always love with projects like this when somebody says, "Man, I never knew fill in the blank," or "Wasn't that something?" And um, so we see all the listeners out there, and we're very appreciative of your support, and we'd love to hear what you're enjoying. So, anything else? I think you want to talk about the beer pour videos that are starting to go up.
I do. So one of the other things that we've been doing for a number of weeks now is some little promotional videos that are really intended to underscore the promote your local or support your local Michigan breweries theme, and hopefully drive customers and businesses to our member businesses or member breweries, or at least get people thinking about them and talking about them more than they already do. So we did a series of um, videos that were kind of regionally focused, and they showed breweries with different themes and different things going on. There were really some great photos, and we've retooled that to be a little shorter format, which we think is more digestible. And we changed the theme up to be focused on beer styles. And we just recently had the first one go out. So I'm looking forward to comments. It's focused on Pilsner as a style. Fred, thank you for helping provide some of the content, including the beer pour. But I think
Yeah.
it's really fun. And again, we're hoping that we get feedback on whether one of your breweries makes a pilsner you love, if you like the style, what you think about it, relate experiences that it makes you think of. So anyway, we're hoping to find that a successful promotion and way to engage with anybody who might be listening or interested.
Yeah. It's local and delicious, any styles that you wishes. So we'll be pouring through the different styles and hopefully hearing from you about what your favorite Michigan version of that is. Well, with that, it seems like it's a good time to jump into the Brewer's Dozen, our weekly tradition of giving shout outs to 13 member breweries. Scott, you want to kick it off?
Love to. Beer Distillery in Comstock Park, very close to the home of the Winter Beer Festival. And while I think distilling is their core business, um, they do make and offer beer, and they actually produce a lot of what would be considered beer that then gets or could become beer that gets distilled into their different products. So it's very akin to brewing, and they indeed are a brewery and offer beer to guests as well.
Excellent. I think that's a great educational experience, too, as a conversation where you understand that to make good whiskey, you got to brew beer, essentially. Excuse me. Next up is Brew Works in the Commons of Fremont.
Yeah, Fremont is, I guess it's a little north and a little south and a little west in the lower peninsula. I guess it's kind of hard to be, I guess it's northern southwest to me. But Fremont's a small town. I'm not too familiar with Fremont, but I have enjoyed a beer at the Brew Works, and they've got a couple of other businesses tied in what they call the Commons.
It's on the east
Um,
side of the northern
Another,
southwest.
yeah, thank you for that clarification. I'd like to recognize Brown Iron Brew House, which is in Washington Township, and I can probably give a similarly vague and confusing description of where that is, as Greater Detroit. Not being somebody who's a native of the Detroit area, sometimes it gets all Detroit to me, but Washington Township is in the Greater Detroit area. It's not Detroit, and they've developed a great reputation for not only their own beers, but doing a really wonderful job serving other beers, Michigan beers, other beers, food. And they have a second restaurant in Royal Oak now, Brown Iron Brew House.
Yeah. Next up is Cranker's Brewery in Big Rapids, home of Ferris State, who has a great brew management program and hospitality program. Happens to be my connection to Big Rapids, but Cranker's Brewery has been up there making beer for quite some time.
Yeah, it's attached to a Coney Island type restaurant. So good food and good beer. It's in the similar region there in the kind of central part of the lower peninsula is Hunter's Handmade Brewery and Ale House in Mount Pleasant. And Hunter's is in a retooled popular bar in the Mount Pleasant area, and they did a nice job adding the brewery there.
Yeah, so this next one I may need a little help making sure I get it right, but Lake Superior Smokehouse Brew Pub. I don't have a location on my list.
Oh, I apologize for not filling that in. That's in Harvey. And this is in a location that was fairly recently Chocolate River Brewing Company that was added on to a local tavern. So it's a cool local place. Harvey is very near Marquette. And this is a new kind of retooling. It is a brew pub. They offer other a full array of other drinks and beverages, and they've got a small brewery there. Actually, our friend Grant Lake has made a lot of the beer there.
Oh, great. Next up, we have Four Leaf Brewing in Clare.
Yeah, I guess that kind of fits thematically too with hunters and crankers in that sort of central lower peninsula area. But Four Leaf is right downtown Clare. Another downtown brewery is Harbor Light Brewery in South Haven. Of course, South Haven is a seasonal beach town, great beach and nice place to spend time in the summer. Not that it isn't a nice place to spend time otherwise, but Harbor Light is a couple years old now, and it's nice to be able to get a fresh beer at more than one location in South Haven.
Yeah, and here's another longtime member, North Peak Brewing Company in Traverse City. They've been making beers. They have a great pub. They've also been making a lot of beers in distribution, and have an interesting partnership with the Jolly Pumpkin crew as well.
Yeah, like you mentioned, some of the longest standing and most successful brew pubs in the state are managed by a central group, and North Peak is one of them. And if you go there, you get their level of expertise, whether it's service or food or beer. It's all well done. Reed City Brewing Company in Reed City is a relatively new brewery, although they've been at it for, I want to say, more than 2 years now. And again, this is in a storefront in a downtown location. It's great to see these places be part of, I don't know Reed City well enough to say it, but I assume it helps revitalize and reinvigorate the downtown area.
Yeah, and here's the one that's new to me, Superior Culture in Marquette.
Yeah, so Superior Culture is relatively new. It's very small. They got started, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they were kind of focused on kombucha and then branched out into beer. So I think they're doing some unusual fermentations, or maybe unusual to those of us who focus on beer. Although, as I say that, I know a lot of folks that kombucha has been part of their passion right along with beer. So small place, again in Marquette. Then we've got the Mitten Brewing Company, which started in Grand Rapids. Really cool old firehouse type building. I don't remember the exact history, but they've done a great job. Baseball themed, good beers, great pizzas, and they expanded to 2 additional locations, one in Northport and one in Saugatuck. So kind of branch outlets of the Mitten.
Yeah, and Chris Andrus, one of the founders and partners there, is one of the featured interviews in A Rising Tide. So his interview will probably make this podcast at some point, and you can hear a little bit from him in that book on Michigan Brewers Guild history. Last up, rounding out the Brewers Dozen, is Tibbs Brewing Company in Kalamazoo.
Yeah, part of the Kalamazoo beer scene, I guess. One of the great beer cities in the state.
Absolutely. So thank you, everybody, for making these breweries great and part of our scene. And hopefully all listeners will go find a new brewery to check out on the list, or visit one they already love. So next up, we're going to hand it off to Edward Stencel. He founded River Rouge Brewing Company in Royal Oak. They opened in 2014. Like I said before, this is an interview right now in the here and now, and this is pretty interesting. He's a very energetic, forward-thinking person, and interesting to hear how his brewery and himself, what their response is to this whole changing dynamic.
Yeah, I think their story is very interesting to hear. Of course, Edward and his wife are partners in the brewery, and they're small, and they're very small, very hands-on operators. And the COVID situation's been difficult for them, just like it has for many, but they're persevering. Edward, of course, is now on our board of directors, and he Edward just, he really wanted to engage with the community early on. And so I think becoming part of the Brewers Guild was a natural for him. But I've gotten to know him and really become friends with Edward because of his approach, which was to get engaged and to share his opinions. Like you said, he's very energetic, and he's got a certain intensity level that not everybody has. I've really grown to appreciate it, but I remember a few years back, Edward, at the, he told me that about something that could be improved at the summer beer festival. But he said, I'm not the type of guy that just tells you. He said, I'd like to help you solve the problem. And it had to do with the brewer parking in the back area, where there is some parking and some swamp and some confusion. And he was right, but he really did make himself a part of the crew by solving that problem. And it's a little bit of a thankless job. He spends the day in the sun out there with other folks that he recruits to help him manage a behind the scenes operation that has been frustrating and confusing for some. But that just really led to him getting closer to the organization, learning more about what we were doing, and then he ultimately ran for the board of directors, and um, is one of our board members. So I've really become friends with Edward and know his story, and think it's a great and in some ways classic story of just working through it. I also he one of the reasons we're close is he will tell you that I saved his life one time, which is probably a story for another time. That's
Oh
that's
yeah.
a little dramatic, but yeah,
Wow,
he,
you teased that one up, and
we
it's
do
not
have
in the
that in
interview.
common. Yeah, yeah,
It's not in the interview. We're gonna have to get
no,
that out of you on the next one, I suppose. And I'm so
yeah,
surprised that that letting the brewers all decide where to park in the brewer parking lot on their own didn't pan out. That's that's so
yeah. It was
shocking.
it
So
was a
shocking.
shock.
All right. Well, that sounds like a good enough introduction for me. We're going to hand it off here to Edward Stencel of River Rouge Brewing Company, and he's got some interesting announcements of new project, new direction for them. So we'll let you hear it from him. Here's Edward. Cheers.
Cheers.
Well, welcome to Michigan's Great Beer State podcast, Ed. I'd love to start just hearing about how you got in this crazy world of brewing and Michigan beer.
Wow, that is sort of a crazy story. How I got into the how I got into the beer world, the Michigan beer world. I actually came to Michigan. I'm from here. Was born here and went to high school here, but I was living out in California, and I moved here because of the film incentives. And at the end of 2010, I arrived. My wife had a job transfer, and I'd been living in California for quite a long time. And I showed up, and all of a sudden the new governor got elected, and they killed all the film incentives, and I had no work. So
Oh boy.
I found myself, with nothing to do. And I ended up going back to California, and a friend of mine gave me a job in San Diego. And I was always a big beer guy. And I ended up having a lot of spare time on my hands because I didn't know a lot of people in San Diego other than my buddy that had me down there. And I started drinking at AleSmith, and the folks at AleSmith Brewery in San Diego, they started asking me, like, why are you so passionate about beer, and why don't you make your own beer? And I'd never thought about it. And they got me into brewing. And then there was a small brewery called Intergalactic that had just opened up in San Diego, and I started brewing on the weekends over there. And the guys there said, hey, what are you going to do with your beer? And I said, I can't drink it all myself. I don't know that many people here. And so I started making my beer and started making it there at Intergalactic, and we started selling it there. And the beer community in San Diego kind of adopted me. And so I moved from being in the movie world to the beer world.
Wow, that's quite a shift.
It was, yeah.
And so it sounds like you were pursuing it just out of this sort of creative intrigue point of view. Do you remember a point where, I mean, as you just mentioned, there was a point where, oh, maybe we can sell this to people through Intergalactic, but do you remember when a spark got lit that said, well, maybe I ought to start my own business, or maybe I ought to open a brewery?
Well, it's funny. When I started brewing, I started doing it, and it was one of those things where it's like, in the movie industry, I was in it for over 20 years, and there was a period of almost 7 years where I'm married. Actually, my business partner in the brewery is my wife, Martha, and we'd been separated. It's not separated, but been apart because of works. For 7 years, I lived in Los Angeles, and she lived in Kansas City. And I said we were never going to do that again. And I found myself working back in California, and she had been transferred to Michigan, the Detroit area. And so we were doing it again. I was basically living out in San Diego. And so I took the opportunity to, like, hey, this beer thing could catch on. And it already caught on. It was catching on. And I said, wow, I was looking at the brewery Intergalactic. It was a very small brewery. It started off on a 1/2 barrel system. It moved up to a 3 barrel system. And I thought I could, maybe I could do this. So with the help of the guys at Intergalactic, they actually came out to Detroit and helped me set up the brewery at the end of 2014, beginning of 2015. And that was really, it was out of necessity of saying, hey, I'm tired of being away from my wife all the time. I need to have a job where I could work back in, close to at home in Michigan where my wife lives. And so that's what really was, it kind of jumped me into the beer community, quite accelerated. I wish I would have had more time to experiment and brew on my own. But, one of the things, being on a small system, on a 3 barrel system over the past 5 years, it's given me an opportunity I brewed over 300 different types of beer. And I really have been able to hone my skill as a brewer on the small system. And now I'm looking forward to, in the coming years, and getting to a little bit bigger system where I don't have to brew as much. But really, the whole thing, kind of from the very beginning, it was an opportunity for me to again and be with my wife.
Yeah, that makes sense. And can you share, what was your role in the film industry, and what are some of the parallels, if any, or differences in terms of your transition from one industry to another?
Yeah, it's funny you should ask that. Well, my role, I actually went to graduate film school. I have a degree I have a master's in film and television production. I lived over in Bristol, England, home of animation films, Aardman Animation, Wildlife. A lot of my good friends worked on Wallace and Gromit, those movies. So I got my start. I went to grad school there, and I concentrated in cinematography and in producing. And so when I got out of school, I came back to the U.S. I started working on television shows. A lot of people probably know a show called Blind Date that was on in the 90s. I worked on a show. I worked as a camera operator, cameraman. I worked on the show Star Trek Enterprise with Scott Bakula. I worked as I did interviews. I did the promotional part. So I was on set with the cast and crew, and I would do interviews with people that were technicians, and I do people that were the actors. And what was really cool is I got to do interviews with people, because I'm a Trekkie, a science fiction guy. I got to do interviews with people from all the different Star Trek series. So I met some of the original writers from Star Trek. I met people from Next Generation. I met people from Deep Space Nine, from Voyager, from the movies. So it was really fascinating. I really enjoyed that as a science fiction fan. But so I worked as a camera operator, as a technician, but I also worked on independent films. I did a lot of documentaries. Probably my most well-known documentary is called Shades of Grey, which was shot in Lawrence, Kansas, and around the Kansas area, and it was about gay life in the Midwest. And I had a lot of friends that were in the gay community, and it was a very important subject for me, and I got involved with that. And it was a very well-received, award-winning documentary about gay life in the Midwest. So that was one of. So I did independent film. I did, and I worked on this. You know, my money generating was with studios and with. I did Taco Bell commercials. I worked on them. I didn't shoot the Taco Bell commercials. I was a crew member. And then I got into film festivals, which is a lot. When I think of film festivals, I think of beer festivals.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked. I was one of the original people with the Kansas. It was called Kansas City Filmmakers Jubilee in Kansas City, Missouri. I was on the board. I was the vice president for 9 years. In California, I was involved with Temecula Valley International Film and Music Festival. I was on the board of directors. I was on that for 9 years also. Slam Dance, which a lot of people know Sundance. I was a programmer for the Slam Dance Film Festival in Park City. I actually went to the Sundance Institute for producing. I did that, went to the producers lab at Sundance. I was very active in the independent film world. There was a show called Split Screen. It was on IFC and Bravo. It was John Pearson was the host, and he was very prominent in the independent film world. And he was the guy that discovered Michael Moore, which I actually had the pleasure of doing a movie that, a documentary, Shades of Grey. Michael Moore actually gave us money and helped us with that movie, kind of the Michigan connection there. And then, John Pearson, who did Split Screen, where I did some episodes on that, he was the guy that discovered Michael Moore, Spike Lee, Richard Linklater, Kevin Smith. He was the guy with Blair Witch. I was working with him when the whole Blair Witch thing blew up, which was really kind of funny because you're talking about parallels with the beer industry. And one of the things is, like, independent film reminds me of what small craft beer is all about. You know, having your brand, having something unique, getting out there, being part of a community. And that's how the independent film world was for me. And I saw a lot of parallels, but I also went through the transition where independent film became part of the big beer scene, and or not big beer scene, big movie scene. I'm kind of overlapping there, but and when Blair Witch hit, I remember I was on the phone with John Pearson, and we were working on an episode, and he said to me, "Mark my word, this is the end of film," because Blair Witch sold for made all kinds of money. And I think it made over $100 million. And he said, once the studios realize that independent films can make that kind of money, they're gonna jump in and try to crush the independent scene. And they really did. And that was kind of the end of the heyday of the independent film from movies like Slacker and Dazed and Confused. And I guess Dazed and Confused was more of a studio film, but Slacker was independent. And Kevin Smith's Clerks and a lot of those independent movies. But I see that with the beer industry where, you know, it was kind of, everyone was doing it. In San Diego, there was a fantastic community like there is here in Michigan. And it was very exciting to be part of that and to be, and to, you know, feel like you were part of a community. And as the beer community grew up, like in the film industry, I see that, you know, when Ballast Point got bought out, and then you have all these other breweries that start getting bought out, and big money kind of jumped in, the big breweries, and the tone kind of changed a little. I think we've kind of seen that. And I also kind of I don't mean to be I don't know. I kind of saw a lot of parallels when I started seeing. I went to GABF and went around the country to different beer events, and I saw these people that were kind of the rock stars of the beer industry, and they seemed to be, you know, excited about it. And you know, I don't want to say full of themselves, but they were definitely, you could see they were getting this attitude about beer. And I'm like, I saw this already in the independent film world when money started coming in and people started getting a little full of themselves. And I'm like, that's not a good thing. I like the fact that one of the things that brought me to and keeps me in the beer industry is how grounded people are, and the community aspect of it. And I kind of, think of what's going on right now with the beer industry being not in a big upright, a big what's the word I'm like? It's not ascending. It's kind of leveling off and descending. It's kind of getting saturated, and it's become more competitive, and people are dropping out, and it's become more difficult. And I see that as not as a good thing, because people are kind of, there isn't this craziness of that mentality that was starting to pop up in 2015, 2016, which I saw in the movie industry of like, hey, look at me, and I'm making all these millions in the beer industry, and you don't see that as much. It's more about, hey, look at, let's make beer, let's make good beer, let's be about the beer. And anyways, that's kind of there is a lot of parallels that I found between the movie industry and the craft beer industry.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I hear you identifying the threads, especially from sort of a market / community / sort of brand segment point of view. How about when it comes to building a brewery? So whether that's the team or the equipment. So like, I guess it's kind of a twofold question. Like when you and Martha decided to start this, what was that conversation like in terms of, hey, I got an idea, let's do this? And then maybe tell me about the initial, getting the initial team together and, putting up a brick and mortar business, which is a lot different than I'm guessing the transientness of going from project to project in the film world.
Exactly. It's I tell my film friends, it's running a small brewery is like being on a production, except the production never shuts down. It just keeps on. It wears you out, and yeah. It is. It's like, hey, at least you're on an independent movie. You may only be on it for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or if it's a big movie. Like the biggest movie I ever worked on was Mars Attacks, and that was like a huge production. Those goes on, they go on for months. But yeah, it's funny. My wife was very supportive. She's always been supportive when I was in the film industry, and she saw this as a good opportunity. She knew I was excited. I was always a beer person. You mentioned how when I was a kid, I had a beer can collection. I had my first beer, I think I was probably 12. My dad, his family came over from Poland, and he was very much, hey, there's a beer in the refrigerator. You want to have a beer? It's right there. You're growing up. My first beer was really that, and so I've always been passionate about beer, like I was passionate about. Well, I still am passionate about film, and so my wife saw that I had that passion for the beer industry and for beer. So she supported me, and I actually initially the first year and a half or so, my brother was involved. He was beer enthusiastic, and he was part of the original team. So it was my wife, my brother, and myself that put it together, and Alex Van Horn, the owner of Intergalactic, and his guys there, Anthony and Jake, the two guys that were part of his team. That was part of my initial team that got me started. And I put it together a lot like I put an independent film together. I put a whole proposal, business plan, looked at the finance. I did start it like an independent movie, very underfunded, not enough money. People ask me, how much money do you need to start a brewery? Well, honestly, I started this brewery with about $125,000, which is probably $200,000 to $300,000 less than I think you really need. I really bootstrapped it, and I worked every day. I put things together myself. I had the guys from Intergalactic, Anthony and Alex. They came in. We put our draft system together. We built a table for our mill. We put everything. We did it all like we did in the movie industry. What we couldn't afford to buy, we figured out how to make and made do with what we had.
Yeah. So that's exciting. And tell me a little bit about what River Rouge came to be, and kind of how would you either describe your brewery to somebody who hasn't been there or tasted your beer, or what does it become for the community?
Yeah. So River Rouge, well, the name came from my father and from my grandfather. My grandfather came over from Poland. He settled in River Rouge. He built his first home in River Rouge. Sadly, it got bought by the city and the high school, and the football athletic field is where the original house was. But we thought it would be interesting. It was as a tribute to my family, my father's family, to name it River Rouge. We've since learned a lot over 5.5 now. We've been open just over 5.5. It's been a bit of a struggle not being in River Rouge. We're in Royal Oak, and people being passionate about River Rouge like we are. It's been confusing, so the River Rouge feel is blue collar. It's working hands. You come into the brewery. I'm sitting here right now. It's very people describe it as your downstairs basement. It's pretty much we made do with what was here. This was the original Knights of Columbus. It was built back in the late 1940s. The bar is one of the oldest bars in Royal Oak. The person I leased it from, they were adamant that I didn't do anything to the bar, that I left it as is. So I got stuck with a lot of things when I opened up here. The space it's small. It's only about 1,400 square feet. It's kind of really small to have a brewery operation and a tasting room all in one. But I didn't know any better, and I think sometimes in the movie industry it was that way, and it's that way in the beer industry. Sometimes it's good not to know everything, because if you know everything, you'd say, why am I doing this? Why did I get myself into this? And so I kind of went into it a little naive to the ways of how certain things work, the economies of scale, and not having a big system. And I just kind of made do with the place. And so the River Rouge, we have a saying around here, we'll just River Rouge it. It's like that's how my grandfather was, and my father's. You make things work. And so it's kind of a homey, comfy feel here, and it's people like it because it's not fancy. It's down to earth. It's bare bones. We have picnic tables. Right now we have less tables, obviously, because we're at 50% capacity, so we had to move stuff out. But it's got a nice bar. We have a nice group of people that are our patrons. And what's great is it kind of has a pub feel. From my time, I lived in England when I was in grad school and film, and then when I was in the film world, I spent a lot of time in Europe and Asia. I traveled the world a lot with that job, and I like the feel of a pub, of a community type feel for a drinking place. I like people. I like that comfiness, and I always tell people, if I wasn't here working, I'd be in here drinking. This is the kind of place I want to hang out, have a beer. You can talk to, usually it's me or my wife or one of the other people that work behind the bar, but I work a lot. I not only make the beer, run the business, I serve the beer too. And it can be overwhelming, but it's also, it's kind of an asset at River Rouge that we have. You come in, people, if they want to talk about the beer, I can talk about the beer because I made it. And it can be frightening if they don't like the beer. Unfortunately, a lot of people enjoy our beer, and we have a lot of supporters. We're known for our peanut butter chocolate Stencel stout. That's our #1 selling beer. It's my stouts are my beers. I love stouts. My first beer I brewed was a Guinness clone, and I don't know what, just the creativeness in me from the very get-go. I started modifying the recipe. I looked at it and I thought, I'm going to change this. I don't know why I did that, but it's something with beer making. I've just kind of had that natural knack of just, I want to try something. I try it. I do it a certain way. And we make beers, but we're known, we like our stouts. We have IPAs. I kind of have an eclectic beer line. It's I do ales. I started getting into pilsners when I got the equipment to do that. When we first opened, I started off on plastic fermenters, and then I worked my way up to stainless steel. Now I have 10-barrel fermenters, 7-barrel fermenters. I kind of went, step by step over the 5 years and grew. And right now, actually, it's funny. I didn't know if I was going to make it here on time. Right as I was coming to the brewery, I was at home working, looking at my, putting some notes together for the show. And I get a phone call, and it's Country Malt, and they're delivering. And I have my deliveries now I have a new facility over in Oak Park. And I have a forklift over there. And one of my friends gave me this old forklift, the TCM. It works, starts up. It looks beat up, but man, it fires up and it works great. So I run over there because this truck, it's 3 miles away from where I'm at. I get in my car, I race over there. It's 2:30, and I have to go over it's 3 miles away. I go over to Oak Park. The driver's there waiting for me. I pull out this little forklift. I pull it up. The guy looks at me and says, "You know what the weight rating is on that forklift?" I'm like, "Yeah, 2,000 pounds." He looks at the paperwork, and I'm like, "Yeah, I know. It's really close, isn't it?" He goes, "Yeah, it was 2,245 pounds was the payload." So I thought, it's got to be fine. So I pulled it off the truck. I felt the forklift a little light in the back.
Yeah.
I pulled it. I dropped it. I started going up the driveway to put it inside the building, and it bounced a little. I got it. I dropped it. I'm like, I'm never doing that again. But anyways, I kind of went off on a tangent there, but that was right before this. I ran from our new building, which is in Oak Park, which is an 8,000 square foot building, and we're in this transition. River Rouge is going to be our company name, but actually we're changing our brand. We're going to be changing to Unexpected Craft Brewing Company, and that's going to be happening at the end of the year. And we just decided that fit with our theme, because for me it was an unexpected craft going into beer making from the film industry, and the spirit of River Rouge that we started. We're carrying on with that. We're going to still probably have some River Rouge brands, but we just found it was just too difficult for people to find our place, because they thought we were downriver and we were in Royal Oak. So now we're going to kind of do a whole new thing, and our place in Oak Park is going to be Unexpected Craft, and that's going to be our new home.
Gotcha. So, so you're moving there, or you're going to operate 2 facilities?
Well, that kind of jumps into the whole COVID thing.
I see.
The original plan was to have 2 places. We've kind of rethinking that and looking at it, and now it's kind of changed. Our whole plan was to have the tasting room here, in Royal Oak, and still keep the River Rouge brand here, and then have the new Unexpected Craft. But the way things are right now, really, we're preparing to basically consolidate into one facility. We feel like it's going to be a rough road the next year to 2 years, and that it just doesn't make sense for us. Probably, I guess, on the show, I'm giving you, this is probably the first time I've said it publicly. I've mentioned it to a few people. We're not really sure. We're close, but honestly, it just makes sense for us. I mean, we love our facility here, and we're really grateful the first 5 years that we've had here. But this whole change with the COVID and 50% capacity, and we have a small tasting room. So I mean, our capacity right now is 24 people. It's hard to make a business with 24 people.
Yeah.
So we're moving to the new place, and we're kind of excited about that.
That's exciting. That's a lot to process too. That's a lot going on. So rooting for you, and it sounds exciting. So unexpected. And regardless, so there's new production space there, and also a tap room as well. Then, so you've got. Tell me about the new space, and sort of what that looks like.
I'm excited. Yeah, the new space. There's a 2,000 square foot tasting room that's going in there. There's over 2,000 square foot production facility side. There's warehouse space. Today I was working on. There's going to be a nice VIP room. One of the things I love about one of my favorite breweries, AleSmith over in San Diego. They have a barrel room. They have a small, just private, where you go in and there's nothing but barrel aged beers, and I love barrel aged big beers. And so I'm going to try and and do that at the new place. Have like a special kind of VIP barrel room area, and I've been doing that. The building is an old 1930s screw factory. It's kind of funny. It was originally they made parts for tanks during World War II.
Wow.
It's a cool industrial space. It's got a lot of character to it. There's one room up front that looked like a waiting room at a dentist office, and we're like, what are we going to do with this room? And we realized that there was 2.5 feet above the ceiling and beautiful wood beams. So we tore it out the last couple weeks. We've tore it all down and exposed it, ripped up the floors, and it's going to be the VIP room. It's a beautiful old classic looking space. And so I'm excited about that. I've been working on that. I work on that in my spare time, which is in between brewing, running a business. I'm redoing a house too. I have a house. I'm almost done with that, and we're selling my current place. So talk about sensory overload during the COVID thing. Have a house for sale, finishing a house, finishing a brewery, and running the brewery.
Yeah, that's a lot of plates to keep spinning. So how has I guess in regards to that, how has your team changed over the years? Are you doing all of the brewing yourself? Are there other people on the production team? What is that?
Yeah, I mean, we did have a team, and we kind of, just because of the whole COVID thing,
yeah,
we shut down. We had to lay people off, and there was Alan Beulah was my assistant brewer. We worked for 3.5, almost 4 years for me, and so he's kind of he would brew with me and brew without me, and now I'm kind of back to brewing myself because we're just kind of a small makeshift. So we're hoping we get the new place. We're going to add more people. So we had sort of a tight crew. We only had about 5 people working here. It was 5 to 8 depending on the time of year, but we're hoping to double that at the new place and add more people and add more brewers and get that going. But right now it's just me. I mean, me cleaning kegs, me cellaring beer, making beer. I enjoy it. It's exciting. It gets me up in the morning.
Yeah. So one of the things we like to talk about is sort of your perspective on the community, the beer and brewing community in Michigan, and maybe, and you have it experienced kind of from a few different angles, but do you remember like your first intersection with what you'd consider to be the professional brewing community of Michigan or the Michigan Brewers Guild, and what stood out for you?
Yeah, I would say my first introduction to the Michigan brewing community was probably Kunin's. Eric and Brett Kunin and Eric Senior, they were pretty much my first like go-to brewery, and those guys, I've become friends with them. They've been very supportive, and that was a good feeling. I remember, when I moved here from California, that was, there weren't as many breweries and Kunin's was one of them. Dragon Mead was another, and then Atwater was another brewery that I went out to and experienced and enjoyed. In fact, I still miss, a lot of people talk about Atwater when they had the tasting room right in the middle of the brewery. They had this like makeshift, and I thought that was great because you could have a beer. People love that, being in the actual facility. But I really I started going to beer festivals. So when I started getting in the beer community in San Diego, and I was involved there. So when I'd come back to Michigan, because I was basically going back and forth. I was spending like 3 weeks in California and 1 week in Michigan. So I was out there and back and forth because my wife was here and I had a place here. And so I got to experience both. It was really interesting because the California community was, I initially felt it was a little bit more open and more laid back. But I think it's more of a Midwestern Michigan thing. And once I got to know more people in the community, it opened up. And I feel like that's always the case. I mean, there's going to be differences in regions, California, Michigan, East Coast, the South. There's always different different ways of doing things, but I got my exposure. I started going to I'm trying to think the very first beer festival I went to in Michigan. I'm trying to think. I think it was a summer beer festival. I think it was one of the summer beer festivals I went to, and then I went to the fall beer festival, and I had a great time. I thought it was fantastic. I think this is probably 2012, 2011, 2012 is when I started going to beer festivals here in Michigan. And I started to see people, a lot of the people that are part of the beer community still are at these festivals. Yeah, I found it, exciting, and it's kind of, I went to high school in Livonia, and I kind of felt, the very first beer festival was in Livonia, and it's kind of weird that, like, I grew up there, and I always had this connection between movies and beer, and somehow the beer found me. And so with the beer festivals starting in Livonia, and me going to high school and living there and knowing that, I thought it was funny that they stopped being in Livonia for obvious reasons. Anyone that knows Livonia knows their policing policies. And, it made sense to get out of Dodge with that. But yeah, I mean, I think, through the festivals, I got to know the beer community and become more and more involved. And once I opened up the brewery, obviously became a member of the Michigan Brewers Guild. I really like our community. I think we have a very strong presence, not only in Michigan but nationwide, and it's something to be proud of as a Michigan brewer and as a Michigander. It's something that unless you go out into other communities and see the difference, you can't really fully appreciate what we have here in Michigan.
And so, even though we're in very strange times with the COVID, and we'll talk more about that here in a second, but that whole situation, I'm still curious about, as a relatively young brewery, 5 or so years in, but with a pretty experienced perspective, do you have any thoughts or suggestions or kind words for somebody who might be a brewery in planning, or somebody who's a brewery that's been open for a year or two, in terms of, I don't know, just encouraging words, especially as it relates to joining in and being part of the community? We were just talking about what's the encouraging words or the invitation for young breweries, or any brewery for that matter, to get engaged with their colleagues and brewing community?
Well, I think for me, the encouraging words is be passionate about what you're doing. Brewing it takes a lot of time. Starting a brewery is a big job. It's not a part-time job. It's not a 40-hour week job. It's an 80-hour plus a week job. It's something that is you have to really be passionate about it, and it's a lot of hard work. So my encouraging words are just basically that: be passionate about it, and work hard, and engage your community. Reach out to your friends, your family, to your neighbors. Let them know what you're doing. Most people are going to be helpful. It's amazing. I've heard it from other breweries and other brewery owners that when you start a brewery, the people that come in and become patrons, and then they become your friends. I mean, I have people that help out and that want to help out, and people that I've gotten to know over the past 5 years that have become friends that started off as just patrons. They came in. So I think you have to be you just have to be open to your community and passionate about what you do. And when they see that you're serious about beer making, and that you're putting your best foot forward, they'll support you. I mean, I think that's part of the beer community. That's one of the things that I really love about it, and it's why I enjoy being part of it, support it, and I think it's important. You just need to be passionate and supportive.
Outstanding. So you have recently joined the board of directors for the Michigan Brewers Guild. Thank you for that, for stepping up. Is there anything you think more people should know about the guild, the organization, from that sort of vantage point, from what you've learned as a board member?
Well, yeah, it's interesting. I got involved with the guild. It's funny. It was summer beer festivals. The back parking lot was always a lot of fun, disaster. And I just asked Scott Graham. I said, Scott, something needs to happen with that back parking lot. And he said to me, do you want to do something? And I said, yes. And a year later, he got a hold of me and said, you still interested in helping out on the parking lot? And I said, yes. He said, well, it's yours. Let's figure out some ways to make it better and more just user friendly for the breweries. And so I got involved, and I did that for a couple of years, and it was really interesting being involved. I got to know more people. I got to see how hard working the staff is, and the people that volunteer, and the people that help out with our beer festivals. It was a great insight into that community, and to meet more brewers. So I would encourage anyone out there that's part of our guild, and people that are enthusiasts to get involved with the Michigan Brewers Guild. Especially, hopefully, we'll be doing more events soon. I know it's with the COVID thing, it's trying times, but it won't be long. We'll be doing beer festivals again. We'll be doing other events, but you just have to get out there and lend a hand, and you get to know new people, and you'll get to experience the beer industry from a different angle, which is great. It's exciting.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. So I think it's time to jump into the Great Beer State last call questions. I got a few questions I've been asking everybody. The
Okay.
first one relates to something we have talked about a little bit, is the pandemic. How has COVID-19 and the related regulations, how's that all affected your business and your industry outlook looking forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely affected me. I mean, like I'd mentioned, for one, being shut down for a few months. I didn't do delivery. I wasn't able to do delivery or just to go beer. So my brewery was shut down for a few months, so that hurt. And then being at half capacity, it's definitely it's made things tight and tough, and it's made me rethink how I was going forward with opening up a new facility. So now I'm consolidating. So it's definitely had a huge impact on our brewery.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Well, best of luck navigating all that. It sounds like you've got a plan that's going to carry you through, and that's the best we can do in these difficult times. Next question is, the more you know. What beer style are you most connected to, and what do you wish more people knew about it?
Well, I'm connected to stouts. That's why I actually Stencel Stout. I trademarked that. And people always ask, what's a Stencel Stout? Well, it's a stout that I make. So I just love dark beers. It's something that I'm very passionate about. First beer I brewed, dark stout beer. And I would say what I wish people would get to know more pastry beers or pastry stouts. I like that. I like that pastry stouts, and actually blending of stouts, blending of barrel-aged beers. They're doing a lot of that in Southern California, in San Diego. A lot of breweries are taking different, they're not only taking stouts and barley wines and Scotch ales, and they're blending them like winemakers do. And I think that's something that the more breweries and more brewers should do. I think you can come up with some amazing beverages by just blending a few things.
Sounds good. The options are endless. The next one is your ideal home bar. So what's your home bar setup like? And then what kind of suggestions do you have for people who are most likely, drinking and serving more beer at home?
It's funny. I really am not I don't really have a home bar. I'm one of those people, I love to go out and drink a beer. So it's been tough. Fortunately, I have a brewery, so I come to the brewery and I have a beer here, even when I was closed. I like that atmosphere. So I really don't have a home setup. It's funny. My wife even says I hardly drink at home. I'll go to other people's houses. I'll drink at their place, or I'll go, someplace that we'll go in a backyard and have a beer there. But really, I don't have. My setup is my brewery.
There you go. So your suggestion is open a brewery, and you'll have the best home bar ever.
Exactly. Yeah.
Love and hate. What current trends do you either love or hate, and how are they reflected or not in your brewery?
Love and hate. I'm sorry, I lost you on that. I should.
I'll go again. So what current trends do you either love or hate, and how are they reflected or not in your brewery?
Well, once again, I love the pastry stouts, the big barrel age. I think there's more and more barrel age available. I'm kind of sad the fact that something like KBS is available year round. I'm not really. I like having beers being special, and I like people doing releases. We do a lot of barrel age releases here. So that I like that. I like that there's a lot of that out there. What I hate. It's not that I hate. I'm just not a big hazy IPA person. I'll drink a hazy every once in a while, and I enjoy a good IPA. But it seems like there's just hazies everywhere, and I could do with less of those.
There you go. Excuse me. There you go. So, do you recall your first drink?
Yeah, it was. I mentioned it was my first beer was a Stroh's
Nice.
beer, and then I got onto the Joe Bell, the Goebels. I discovered Goebel. A lot of the younger people don't remember that in Michigan, but you get a nice case of those in the wood box, the wood crates.
Yeah.
Those are fantastic.
How about your worst drink?
My worst drink is probably is any kind of rum. Not a rum drinker. No rum for me.
There you go. Very clear. And then last one is, who's your bucket list drinking companion? Somebody you'd love to have a beer with, but you haven't yet.
It's funny. I saw that question, and to be honest, I've had beers. I've had beers with so many people. I fulfilled that. I don't really have a bucket list with that. I mean, I was looking at some of the people that I've had beers with. One of my just amazing people in the movie industry, in the beer industry. Before I was in the beer industry, I had a beer with Pierre Celis. I mean, how many people can say they have had a beer with Pierre? I mean, he's the guy, the Hoegaarden, which is a great style, the white Belgian white beer. I got to drink with him. I've had beer with all kinds of different Quentin Tarantino. I've drank with Ethan Hawke. Drank with all kinds of different Hollywood people over the years, and some of my favorite, are my friends. One of my dear friends is not with us anymore, but my drinking experiences with him, Dave Borthwick, he was an animation director from Bristol, England. Were just epic drinking, just a lot of fun, good discussion. That's what's important for me. To me, the bucket list is I feel like I've been blessed with plentiful experiences, and I don't really have anyone that I haven't already had a drink with yet. That I'm looking forward to meeting new people and having drinks with them.
You're into bonus territory. Everything after this is a bonus. So thanks for all the things you do. Thanks for putting beautiful beer out there in the world. Good luck with everything. And thanks for spending time with us here on the Great Beer State Podcast.
You're welcome. Thanks, Fred. It's been my pleasure.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening and sharing while supporting Michigan breweries and craft beer everywhere. The Michigan Brewers Guild was formed in 1997 with its first summer beer festival taking place in July of 1998. Its now 5 annual festivals are dedicated exclusively to Michigan beer brewed by more than 270 member breweries. The Michigan Brewers Guild exists to promote and protect the passionate Michigan beer industry in every way possible. To learn more, visit us at mibeer.com or say hello on one of our social media pages, as we love hearing from you. From coast to coast, from far and near, let's drink Michigan beer.
Let's drink Michigan beer.